Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something that's actually one of my things I love about fishing more than anything else, and that's the conversation on whether to make a long run or stay close. As far as, when you're deciding your fishing area, it doesn't matter if you're fishing tournaments or whatever. And I've got a lot of experience with that. I'll share you guys, and I can give you some insight to really how to make that decision under a different set of circumstances. But hey, real quick before we get started here, just a couple of housekeeping tips. Tomorrow Johnny has his next virtual seminar. I'm not going to be able to join this week because I'm in the tournament, but he's got actually two coming up, one starting tomorrow night, different electronics offshore fishing topics. And if you guys are interested in that, you can just go to fishthemoment.com and sign up. It's always a super educational 3-hour seminar, 6 to 9 p.m. tomorrow night, so you can sign up for that. And also, just a reminder again, a couple weeks ago I started offering memberships to my channel. And if you guys are interested in that, you can just go to the About section on my YouTube page, and that'll direct you to a link where you can get some information about that. But basically, it's just I'm providing 2 commercial-free videos a week, plus some other perks like my email address to answer personal questions. And it's a great way to support the channel if you guys want to help support the channel. It's not going to change anything with what we're doing here regularly, but if you guys just are interested in going a little further to help the channel out, you can check it out there. Much appreciated. So anyway, let's get into this topic here about making a long run or staying close. One of my passions in the sport is making long runs. Not necessarily that I like to drive a boat for a long way, but I like to get away from people. And if making a long run can get me away from people, then I'm all for it. And I used to do it all the time. In fact, the longest run I ever made, I did a video on this last year, was down on the Mississippi River in an FLW tournament where I almost won the thing. Actually, I probably would have won it if I hadn't blew my motor the last day I was leading the tournament. But I was running 190 miles one way every day of the tournament. So that's close to a 400-mile run a day. That's back when we had gas tanks. We could carry spare gas. I had gas tanks strapped all over the back tank. I had gas cans on the bottom of the boat. And since then, they made that illegal, which I don't understand. I still don't understand why you can have $20,000 worth of electronics on your boat, but you can't carry spare gas in the boat with you if it's approved even. But that's another topic. So anyway, and that's not the only long runs. I've had multiple tournaments where I've ran over 100 miles one way in the tournament. And I've also had tournaments where I did good just fishing right next to the takeoff. So here's what you sort of have to determine on that. Let's talk about long runs first about. If you make a decision to make a long run in a tournament, the key elements you have to have is it worth that long run. And in order to make a long run in a tournament like that, you basically have got to figure that the run is going to be worth the quality as far as, going to bigger quality of fish. I've never made a long run before where, I just thought I was going to go catch a limit. It was always where I thought I could, have a chance to make a top 10 or win the tournament. And normally in those situations, it's a matter of time management. You have to determine how long it's going to take you to make this run under whatever conditions, and you have to allow a little bit of room for error. And you have to determine if you can catch those fish in the time that you have. And let me use that Mississippi River tournament as an example. In practice for that tournament, I was staying, just close, or, not a whole lot. I was within like 30 miles of the takeoff, and I just wasn't doing any good. I wasn't getting hardly any bites at all. And the last day of practice, there was a place, I didn't even know how far it was down there, but I fished the FLW Tour Championship way south of where we were launching on the Mississippi River about 5 years before that, and I did pretty good in this one backwater there. So I just didn't have anything to lose. So the last day of practice, I drove down there by my truck and I launched in this backwater and I wasn't in there for 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes I launched the boat, I probably shook off 15 or 20 fish flipping willow trees, and they felt like good ones. Excuse me. And I set the hook on one that was a 4-pounder, and I shook the other ones off. And I fished in there an hour and had over 25 bites in an hour. So I'm sitting here talking to myself, it's like, okay, if I just have 1 hour to fish here, you know, I only need 5 bites and I got 20 in an hour, and let me figure out how far this is going to be. So I took a Gazette, you know, one of those state gazettes, and that had the river on it, and I took a piece of string and I laid it out all through the curves of the river and calculated the distance, and it was close to 200 miles one way. So I'm like, geez, 200 miles in a bass boat, if I can run, say I can run 60 miles an hour, you know, that's going to take me, close to 70. I figured it was going to take me anywhere between 3 to 4 hours to make the run, you know, and just depending. So I went and I calculated the fuel I had. I went to the Walmart and I got a bunch of gas tanks, filled them up, strapped them in there. And I knew the only way I could make the run is if there was gas to get when I got down there. And in this lake that I fished down there was a gas pump. So I knew I could gas up. So to make a long story short, the first day of the tournament, I ran down there, and it only took me about, you know, probably 3 hours to get down there, because I was running with the current and I was pushing 70 miles an hour getting down there. So it only took me about 3 hours to get down there. Got there, gassed up right off the bat. I had to stop and you know, put gas from the tanks in the boat on the way down there. So gassed up and everything. And when I started fishing down there, I looked at my watch and I said, well, I've got at the very most like an hour and a half to fish. You know, that's what I sort of calculated, an hour and a half. So started fishing and everything, and you know, in 15 minutes I had a big limit. So I, you know, loaded up, got out of there, and ran back, and did that anyway throughout the course of the tournament, and wound up, you know, having a really good tournament. Under those conditions, that's one of the things that paid off. That's one of the things that worked. So that's another thing that you sort of have to determine. You have to figure up, you know, if it's worth the risk or reward, you know, to do something like that. So one of the things that I, you know, always try to determine is like, you know, is it going to, you know, have the opportunity to produce those 3 to 4 pound, 5 pound class fish. Now, in a lot of other situations you have, sometimes it's to your advantage to stay close. And a lot of times, one of the big keys on staying close in a tournament is if you have a lot of release fish in an area. If you have a lake that has a lot of tournaments out of one particular area, this is the time that I like to fish close in a tournament. A lot of the lakes that we go to across the country, they have big facilities where most of the tournaments are out of. And when you have that, and as many tournaments that are on the lake, a lot of times it's to your advantage to stay within a couple miles of the tournament site, you know, as close as you can get. A percentage of those fish that are caught in tournaments simply don't swim very far away. I mean, I'm guessing 25% of them, you know, stay pretty close to where they're talking about right off the bat. So anyway, one of the big keys on that is you have to determine if, you know, you have enough cover, and if you're getting enough bites and if the quality's there to stay close. The downside to staying close like that is a lot of people do it. A lot of people are very aware of catching the release fish. Those areas get a lot of pressure. So when you're fishing close, one of the things you have to determine is you have to figure out the technique to catch those heavily pressured fish. And here's the difference between staying close and making a long run. When you're making a long run, usually those fish are more aggressive, and it's not necessarily technique based as much as it is area. But when you're staying close, it's all technique based. And like one of the masters of catching fish close to the takeoff is David Dudley. I mean, he's made so many top 10s figuring out how to catch them on a wacky rig or shaky head close to the takeoff. And there's an art form to that. It's a matter of, you know, patience, you know, staying in one area, waiting for a bite window, and, you know, just having confidence that those quality fish are there. And then, of course, you know, those are the two extremes. You know, you got staying close option, you've got making the long run. It's all a risk reward balance, and then you've got some stuff in between. But in my case, it seems like in most of the fishing I do, it's either I want to run a long way or I want to stay close. And a lot of it is just depends on the style of fishing that you have. But anyway, those are the two considerations that I always take. Just to reiterate, it's like, you know, I make a long run if I feel that I can get away from the crowd and the big fish are in those areas. And I stay close a lot of times if I feel that there's a big population of quality fish close, if I can just figure out the technique for those fish. So anyway, guys, that's just today's tip. Like I said, hope you guys, you know, can use that at some point to your advantage. And I'm going to get out here last day of practice for the Open, see if I can figure them out. So we'll talk to y'all later. See you.